It's today, October the 18th. And October is that month that people think about the spooky and chilling facts of life. Um, Scary, spooky, paranormal, what have you. But so today's kind of like conversation I'm having with my bro is a lot of it comprises a lot of what we did growing up in terms of the spooky nature of things, but really it pushes that aside and looks more about evil in its own nature, meaning the reality of it, meaning potentially at play. So, uh, you know, I I'm a person of faith. I struggle with that. But what I do know is that evil is real. It's a real entity. Whatever material substance it conveys, or whatever how it materializes in people or in acts, it's a real thing. And so today's just kind of a fun exploration into what those things might look like, or what things might be actually in play that we may not know. And that's kind of it echoes the narrative of today that no one really knows what's going on, and that we're continually fed multiple narratives. So there's that connecting theme. And then it's interesting because this podcast has taken me down a circular route of getting a better understanding first of just my origin as a Hmong person, the details of what led to us being caught up in a war thousands of miles away, our ancestors, and then being pulled here. And we just kind of grown up. You just have sort of the surface level narrative your whole life, and then eh, unless you're actually prompted, you don't dig into a lot of the details. But once you do, you start to connect dots from across history, from across themes, and connect dots to even today behind what's underlying what's underneath, what's underlying all of these conflicts, hostilities, and this desire to impart attitudes on people, to make sure that they perceive things the way you perceive them, to make sure that certain factions are in conflict with other, or that you are trying your best to sway public mass opinion, and you're receiving just a mix of all these things, both in the current as well as looking backwards. If you look backwards in history, you're supposed to think of it this way. You're not supposed to think of it that way. It's funny because today's kind of like fun little exploration has to do with the whole idea of conspiracy theory, which has garnered a lot of negative attention to, because there is a lot of work in that conspiracy theory front that perhaps tries to rely too much on sensationalism, but in reality, I mean, conspiracy theory, I mean, what that means is people conspire. Conspire means you do stuff in secret. It means you do something that in your power, you do something in secret with agreement with others so that there's some sort of benefit. And that happens in history. Now, it's only a theory when there's no way to prove it happened. It's just impossible. We're not privy to everything. And if you can't prove it, you almost have to theorize why things turned out the way they did. And then in the middle of that, you're also told how they turned out. And so, but what you're given with how it's told, and you might not be satisfied with that. And what I mean by, if you break down almost all the big things, whether you agree with it or not, this isn't a platform to say something's true or not. JFK assassination, moon landing, 9/11, all the big stuff in history, you're given what happened. And if things may or may not add up, it may lend down towards a path of you wanting to uncover more. And that's called the rabbit hole, and et cetera, et cetera. But usually conspiracy theories are just kind of pushed into the wayside because ultimately they're not consequential. And what that means is, like, whether or not we determine or we believe the moon landing actually happened, it's not consequential for today, really, in the more immediate sphere of things. You remember, like, the Trump administration wanted to release all the stuff about the Epstein, about JFK assassination, and it just seems like, whoa, what's going to be revealed by some of these things? And I know a lot of these things are still being talked about in real time today. The documents and material released for the JFK assassination, but ultimately people who want to know are getting to the bottom of it out of the sheer pursuit of truth. But when they discover a semblance of truth, there's also, well, how do you create awareness of it and get buy-in that it's legitimate? Not only that, what does it matter at the end of it? Let's say you do discover exactly who was the person that assassinated JFK, and it's beyond a reasonable doubt that this was the person. Well, it's not that consequential. So what? So like, it's great for history that we learned it, but it's not going to affect people's daily lives every day. And that's why conspiracy theories get pushed off to the wayside, because what have you. The other downside with conspiracy theory is that it is just theory. It's sort of a educated speculation based on the things that were presented to you, and whether you accept some of those notions or not. But the other part of conspiracy theory is it's not consequential, but it also suffers from its own pursuit of looking for things instead of discovering things. Meaning, it's an old axiom I always use to talk about people's agendas. If you have an agenda that thinks something's is a conspiracy, you're going to be looking for reasons to support that bias instead of actually organically discovering them. You may even manufacture reasons to sort of support that. And so the whole looking versus discovering. So conspiracy theorists usually are guilty of doing a little bit too much of digging for the reasons to sort of support their notion. But this podcast is going to focus primarily on not looking for the reasons, but discovering the reasons, meaning none of this is like digging deep to connect dots that probably shouldn't be connected. These are just basic things that are in our reality now. You know, for example, I don't know all the details, but what's the building in the World Trade Center that just
The 9/11?
Yeah.
World Trade Center 7?
Yeah, the Building 7. So that's one example. 7. You may be familiar with that or not, but Building 7 is like one of those weird, inexplicable things that we just have to grapple with now. Yeah. It's a reality. There's beyond a reasonable doubt, there's no way to get around it. And so that's what we mean, is that we're not looking for those reasons to, but I don't know.
So just going off of kind of what you were saying there, at the premise of this, kind of, we're going to be talking a lot about, in particular, evil. When you're looking at that evil, is it more in the sense of the conceptual idea of something being evil, or ideas being evil, or is it more in the sense of a presence, of a being, of an existence of some kind of evil that's really real within our reality, of real substance, of that's personating to an actual object or person or something in life that we can identify, that has a name or has an identity of some kind? Or are we talking about maybe the conceptual ideas of evil and the ideas of our moral understanding of right and wrong and good and bad and our religious beliefs? Or is it kind of an underlying thing of all that?
I think it's, I'm going to go with the approach of both and, as in evil isn't just like a spectrum of morality. This is good, this is evil. Evil is very much that, but it's, I'm going to go down the path of also saying evil as a realistic entity, whether you call it spiritual. It depends on your framework, your worldview, whether you call it demonic, whether you call it the work of the enemy, Satan, whether you call it worldly, fleshly, worldly desires for money, wealth, greed, etc. Or whether you call it, like a real paranormal essence too. It's sort of going to capture a lot of that, but more so the focus on this is like, how is it being manifested? In history, over the last 100 years, as well as how it's like being applied. What does it look like today? The scariest part about the whole notion of evil work in its present is that you would never know that it's there. And that's the problem. That's the scary part. It's not overt.
But at the same time, it also would say on a larger scale, I feel like there's a sense of feeling within the overall ethos of people that recognition of something that's evil, it's being, how do I put it, more identified, or that presence is kind of there, that people are actually bringing that up to surface, a feeling of sense of like something's terribly wrong in the world about certain actions or certain events or certain things, that people are now really heightened to a certain sense that they can actually feel that a lot more again. And it's not to just throw a label on something and say, oh, that's evil or this, that, and that. But there is this sense that that people are really coming to terms to feel like there's something not right,
Yeah.
of some kind, of some feeling.
Is it not? Because you said it right there. Some things in the world are happening. Something is not right, or something is off, or that's not good, or this is bad. This is just bad. Those are all words. And like you said, you don't want to throw labels on anything. Those are just semantics. Those are just words. You could also just say, to a certain extent, when some of those things happen, like that's evil.
Mm-hmm.
I think anybody in their most objective mindset would say the Holocaust was evil.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to believe in a spiritual realm of evil to just really pinpoint that. The atrocities that took place in many parts of history, the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, the Holocaust, slavery, it's a lot of this power hungry, it's evil in its essence with reverberating implications of what that looks like: selfishness, greed, manipulation,
Yeah.
all sort of doing that. So that's the whole theme of the Halloween chill scare here, is that the conspiracy side is just a pursuit of a rabbit hole that's sort of academically stimulating sometimes to see, oh, what's actually happening.
Yeah.
But if you were to entertain a lot of these, entertain some of these facts, entertain some of these videos, and then you start to wonder why this is the case, and that if you peel the layers back, somebody benefited from this. A lot of people died from this,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of this was a lie.
Yeah.
And so there's like this evil that's lurking. Now, the scary thing, like we said earlier, is that how could you ever pinpoint? Oftentimes, you can't pinpoint to a person that this is the perpetrator, the primary perpetrator of sometimes it's easy. It's overt, like Hitler was the perpetrator.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Goebbels was his minister of propaganda, and I'll probably cover him a lot more too. But the whole idea of using words to manipulate populations and people, that's an evil in its essence. And so,
Yeah.
so that's the thing that kind of gives me chills today. If we're talking about, like, as someone in their middle age now, like, I don't get scared of the paranormal stuff anymore. Although we'll talk about some of that in the next session. But I don't get too scared of the supernatural stuff. But I get scared of like evil, like real evil and play, and
Yeah.
and that's manifested in a variety of ways. And it's scary because a lot of people are saying right now that this person's evil, the president is evil, or this radical side's evil, or that radical side's evil, or this place is evil, or these pockets of the country are full of evil. And now it's sort of that's what to your point, there's sort of an awareness of it now, because I mean, think of it this year, of all the political assassinations,
Yeah.
the rawness of people being killed. The news spits out news stories every other day about people being killed, or a lot of atrocities taking place for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
And it's scary with the notion and the idea of evil, that the understanding and the acceptance of its existence, that those things exist, that people out there, or for whatever it might be, and however we might try and nail it down as what it is, it's an inward selfish connotation of just this kind of idea of like, you want to destroy or harm or do something from what energy or what thought or what idea, and where that comes from, that feeling of, that horrible things can be committed for own self purpose reasons, that those kind of things actually exist within the world, that gives us light to, obviously the selflessness of some people, and the righteousness and the goodness of the other side. But to take in this idea that kind of evil exists, and us being able to really see it firsthand, and and put some ideas and thoughts and ideas around how that manifests itself into our reality, can be pretty frightening,
Yeah.
like. And we see it in all walks of life, whether if it's on the high level, political level, all the way down to even things like into entertainment, or all the way down to just people's, standard beliefs, or psycho killers, or other thing else that happens. But on a scary larger level, when you get into it, and I'm really excited to really open up the ideas around the conspiracy theories in particular, because then you start to wonder who is pulling the strings behind all this. Because it's not just the idea that those things are happening, but it's the ideas that that thing happened and there's still a force that is trying to keep it a secret or trying to withhold the public from really understanding, to identifying it. That in itself is kind of scary, you know? Like, again, we don't know what happened with JFK. We don't know what happened with 9/11. We have theories, maybe accepted by society, called theories. And then you have alternative theories, which is the conspiracy theory side of the house. But there's a lot of questions that remain. And there's a lot of very, very smart people that are asking very good, intelligent questions that really question the original narrative of a lot of these things that are happening. And I don't understand why there is some kind of existent power that's out there that wants to keep this under wraps. And then going back to what you're mentioning about the consequence side of the house, maybe some conspiracy theories are so consequential that it may alter or change the way we believe or see the world. Maybe things won't be the same after that once the truth is kind of revealed.
But that's the problem that we live in today, and we'll dive into it. But really, the problem that we live in today is even if the truth hits you in the face, it won't be consequential because right now there's no standard for there's no collective standard to identify that as valid and legitimate in a broad sense, and that's accepted universally. Everything's going to be questioned by its agendas. Like, for example, James E. Files is a prisoner that I recently started watching a video about he's a prisoner. He's being interviewed, and he claims he was the one that assassinated JFK.
Yeah.
And his recounting is so detailed and so specific that I have a hard time not believing him. Meaning the way he talks, the way he just carries himself.
Yeah.
There's no sense of sniffing out an agenda from him or that he has something to gain. He's just telling it as it is. But he's also not being creative in it or nothing. Like, he's just reciting. Yeah, he's just reciting memories in great detail.
Yeah,
and things that are hard to make up, or that are beyond what someone would try to make up to make himself look cool, whatever.
Yeah,
and so sometimes I'll watch that and I'll be like, this is the guy who killed JFK. Why is it still a mystery? Because of everything. It's almost so perfect the way he says. But even if it were the truth, I don't know if it's the truth. If I were to put my money on it or whatever, I probably think it was him. I haven't dug enough into it. But there's still, even today, active investigations. People are taking a lot of the stuff that's been released. There's been books upon books and articles written about the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
And then this video he had 2 interviews too, and just the way and that's really interesting how you can compare both of his interviews to sort of cross-reference. And yeah, they're very consistent for the most part. They're very, he tells it as it is. And so
this guy is a free man walking.
No.
Oh, he's in jail. Actually, he's in prison.
I think he may have died. I don't know, but he spent the rest of his life in prison.
For something else.
Yeah, I have to look back into it, but again, I only bring him up because sometimes I feel like, well, we've already answered it. This guy, I mean, that's my inkling, and that's my hunch, my belief that that's the case. So even if the truth hit us in the face about 9/11, JFK, everything in the past, how would we ever really arrive and get there and know that too? So
yeah.
But connecting some dots here, I'm gonna jump into some of this. Like, I'm not sure like how many of you guys or how many folks know the story of Werner von Braun.
No. Sounds very Germanish.
German. It is German.
Vampire.
Werner von Braun. I don't know if you've heard of Carol Rosin. A lot of folks in the conspiracist community they already know where I'm going with this because Carol Rosin's name comes up a lot. So essentially it's this. Werner von Braun was an astrophysicist, rocket scientist. He was a Nazi, and he was the one like leading efforts in rocket technology. But then, Germany fell, Berlin fell. The head honchos like Hitler and Joseph Goebbels, all those folks just killed themselves because they lost. And so a lot of Nazi leadership were officers, researchers were still there. And so what happened? the U.S. and Soviet came in and pillaged Germany, meaning take their technology. What were they developing? What was their research?
And at that
What
time,
did they-
Germany was like way ahead of everyone else.
I wouldn't say way ahead, but they had. It's hard to say because I'm not a historian too, but I don't get the impression that they're way ahead. But they had some very valuable stuff. I don't know if you all remember in Oppenheimer that movie scene where it was German research
Yeah.
that led to the splitting of the atom, and that made news, you know, and then that led the U.S. to then respond. We need to do something. We need to be the first to get to the A bomb before someone like Germany gets to it, because they're already ahead. And so there's that semblance of that Germany was really good at certain R&D stuff.
Yeah.
And so Werner von Braun was a lead developer. And so the US got him, and through this got him, what I mean by that is him along with 1,600, I think, other research development officers, everything, brought him to the US without vetting them really, and put them and to learn from them and put them in certain positions, and pretty much repurposed all of them. Under the Operation Paperclip, I believe, was a secret operation to go in and pillage secrets, pillage patents, ideas, everything, and people, the human resource of the German people. So you just took them away because the idea was to get to them before the Soviets did. So even if we didn't need them, we got to take them away, because right after World War II, what was it? The conflict of Soviet and US, the superpowers that remained, because Japan was out of the picture, Germany's out of the picture. But lo and behold, the Cold War, which is a war essentially over ideology. And so we don't remember it in the battlefields or anything. There wasn't any big battles like that, but it was. And that ideology was at the center point of the whole Operation Paperclip, which is let's go in and take all this stuff.
Yeah.
I bring that up because Werner von Braun was also one of the lead scientists, engineers on the rocket propulsion that was a part of NASA's program that led to the first landing on the moon. So so what's interesting about the landing on the moon, I don't know about you, but growing up, like, you just assume that's the case. You learn it in school.
Yeah.
And then later on, and it wasn't until much later that people would bring up, that's fake. But I had no contextual understanding of why anyone would care to say it's fake.
Yeah.
Why is there sort of this conspiracy theory that it didn't happen? And so even if the theory was compelling, I didn't understand the reasons behind why someone would want that to be the case, or why the US would want to fabricate that. But because you're not taught that in school. You're not taught you understand in school that there's a Cold War, there's the arms race, but you're not taught like the real deep ideological battle between these two, that they would do anything to make sure that the other is inferior to the other.
Yeah.
You're not taught any of that. So I never really conceptualized what the whole moon landing.
Because there was a real battle and race to the moon, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The countries, they were like, Russia was deeply involved.
And you think, well, what's the big deal? I mean, of course, humanity wants to get to the moon, but even if they got there first, because the U.S., my understanding was that they were already leaps and bounds ahead of, or the Soviet was leaps and bounds ahead of the U.S. They were the first ones to send like a live animal into space,
the ape or something.
the ape,
like
and all that stuff, and so like, but we're both doing this. We're both trying. I know we have this Cold War, but why is this such a pinnacle of our competition to get to the moon? Because it's understanding it now from that evil scope perspective, meaning if evil's attempt is to sway the masses to ensure that your opinion and your perspective is the right way of life, ideological opposing, if you're trying to say that capitalism is the right way of life, or the way we do things is the right way of life, and to sway the masses, that I think that is one of the most manifested forms of evil, is that lie, is that sort of manipulating perceptions and realities, withholding information, gaslighting, et cetera, et cetera.
So it was a war of like ideology.
Of course. And so there's nothing groundbreaking that I'm talking about here. People kind of know about that.
Yeah.
But it's just a reflection on like how unless you were someone that cared to know why, you're just going to assume that to be the case.
Yeah.
And I've actually never looked at footage of the landing.
Well, I mean, you always see it like,
Yeah.
like little images, like in a Pepsi commercial in the back in the days, or
But-
these like whatever, but not the actual like full original footage. I don't think I've ever seen that.
Well, yeah, that's the point. Well, why haven't more people just commonly seen it all? Because when I saw it recently. I don't know why it took me so long to watch it. Then you start to wonder, oh, so that's why there's this.
Looks fake as shit.
It does look fake as shit. That's right. Again, I'll just put it on, man.
Like, what the fuck is this? Them technology back in the days, Hollywood wasn't caught up yet.
But that's the thing. Unless you care about the details, you have an impression about how these things played out.
Yeah.
But you never really think about the details until it hits you in the face of some of these things. I'm gonna say real quick too. A lot of this, or this path of me first starting this, is because I've been watching a lot of just material on history.
Yeah.
A lot of just material on like propaganda use. But that Professor Jiang from Predictive History is really the one that leading a lot of this major effort in sort of connecting a lot of these dots. And
Yeah.
dude, I'm surprised he's like
Still alive?
alive. I'm scared for him. Like the way he just talks about this stuff, real deal. It's very fascinating. I'm not just like drinking Kool-Aid from him. I'm just understanding that this perspective is very much something that answers a lot of questions that I just refused to ask growing up because I was told that this was the way it was.
Yeah.
So he forces me to ask questions that haven't been asked. And isn't that what you would do as a good teacher, right? But that's my side gig. But Professor Jiang also did
Fake as hell.
and I'm just regurgitating everything he did in his video. But what he said is, look at the amount of propulsion there. And just to do a quick aside, all that rocket propulsion and all that stuff, that would be the stuff that Werner von Braun would be sort of heading up, that he was the leader of the rocket propulsion. So Anansi was a huge facilitator of landing on the moon. Like, I guess I haven't let that sink in until just recently, that Anansi was the lead of this big American triumph. Again, he wasn't the head honcho, but he was hugely part of it. So the propulsion to get you up there.
Hippity hoppity, hippity hoppity, hippity hopping over hill and dale. Da 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 da. Hippity hopping along.
Okay, this is them returning to Earth.
Ignition. Burn away, Houston. Vector
That looks.
I've never seen that until Professor Jiang brought that up to my attention. That 'cause he
doesn't
said
look
so
right.
himself.
That
He's
look
like,
like-
he said this is the best part when when they go back to Earth, and this is the proposed real footage. And who's recording here? Like, I don't know how that works.
Yeah, that looks like the house in Wizard of Oz.
But again, so that's why there's a lot of controversy over it. But why does that even matter? Is it consequential for today, if it was revealed or not? I don't know if it's consequential.
Well, I'm also curious too, and obviously, the U.S. has been back to the moon, right? Again,
yeah, a few other times.
a few other times, right? And are there footages from then? And is that readily and available for the public to see and just watch in the same way? I'd be curious to see how theirs look like.
And that's why these whole theoretical stances are so difficult, because there's a million ways to slice it. It was very well possible that was fake, and then the subsequent visits to the moon were all real.
Yeah.
It was just a matter of getting there first in the panic and the climate of the situation. There's a possibility that was real. Even though that's so hard. Hippity hoppity, hippity hop. All right, we're going home.
No, who's there to hold the camera and zoom up like that?
But then add that to this too. So while they were up there, this is the actual call Richard Nixon had, President Nixon had with the astronauts that are live there. So they're talking on the phone
With Nixon. President Nixon at the
President
time.
Nixon.
There weren't even cell phones, baby. How do they even call?
But that's the point. How come? Like, that's the idea. Like, how come no one's questioned that before? Well, I'm sure a lot of people have questioned that, but Okay, so they're saying, okay, get ready.
So I'm guessing, obviously maybe it's maybe a radio frequency kind of phone thing
Well,
that they
that's
may
the
have.
idea. I mean, that's
You
the
know,
assumption.
Obviously, there probably weren't satellites.
How about right here?
Hello, Neil and Buzz. I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House. And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made from the White House. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you have done. For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives. And for people all over the world, I am sure that they too join with Americans in recognizing what an immense feat this is. Because of what you have done, the heavens have become a part of man's world. And as you talk to us from the Sea of Tranquility, it inspires us to redouble our efforts to bring peace and tranquility to earth. For one priceless moment in the whole history of man, all the people on this earth are truly one. One in their pride in what you have done, and one in our prayers that you will return safely to earth. And thank you very much, and I look forward, all of us look forward to seeing you on the Hornet on Thursday.
What the hell?
So I wonder if you were to randomly go down the street of a busy city and ask, 100 people, how many of them actually have seen the first video and this video just from beginning to end. I don't know, out of 100, how many have seen it, because the only way you would ever come across or want to come across or is if you know that it exists and you have a reason to look for it.
Yeah.
But if the common belief, if the common acceptance is things are the way they were, they landed on the moon, Richard Nixon had this great phone call with them and inspired the nation. And remember, in the tumultuous time that this took place in with the Vietnam War, the country was divided. They needed like a sign of hope. And this was such a feel-good thing. And so out of the 100 people, I'm not sure, but like for me, I hadn't seen this before. And then going back, it just raises, again, all the questions about, I've seen enough CGI movies to know when things look fishy or so the latest development with UFO is now the new thing of footage that we've seen of that. How do we know what's real, et cetera? But looking back at this, like at first I wasn't sure if when he was talking into a message box that would then take his message and like put it like in an envelope, like a voicemail, and then send out, or if in his mind he was having a live two-way conversation in real time.
Well, that's how it's presented.
Yeah.
As if he's having a live conversation in real time.
But then what he says sounds like a scripted, but that's the problem. Like, because if I were to just envision a very real and inspired conversation between a president who's talking to these astronauts, there'd be some level of like impromptu laughter, excitement, or just kind of like the disconnection of speaking over each other because of the feedback or whatever.
Yeah.
Just somewhat of the natural feelings of that. So when he was talking, it sounded like this recording. But then when the astronauts answered back, I'm like, oh, so this is under the pretense of that this is a two-way conversation, which sounds funny. And then I just look at the little dangly cord of his phone that because I remember that phone. Not everybody remembers that phone,
Yeah.
That's actually transmitting to the moon. Like I don't know the technology. And again, this stuff has been probably beat up and unraveled by a lot of folks questioning this. So, but just for me, it's my first time seeing it.
For me, the other odd thing about just that dangling phone, and this is how I'm looking at it too. If the technology exists back then, where he could speak into a phone and have, instantaneous conversations with somebody on the moon, right? Then you would imagine that he would be on NASA space, You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Somewhere
Some
where
station
that
was dedicated
holds
for that.
It looks like he's in the Oval Office. Like, here
Well,
you
no,
go,
he said
President.
that. He's like, I'm in the Oval Office right now.
Yeah,
and
so
that's
he's
what
in
he
the
said.
Oval Office, and so they're just like, here's the phone.
Here's the
and
phone.
you just
We got to dial into this number and we'll be connected to the moon.
yeah. So like, you think, especially at the early age here, where the technology really didn't even exist in regards to how to talk to someone on a moon, right? That only NASA would have that technology because there's no need for it outside of NASA having that technology.
Yeah.
So you would imagine that he would be at NASA's base. It would make more sense that he's at NASA's
If
base.
you want to stage something.
Yeah, if you want to stage something like this, or maybe they just forgot and they really didn't put that much thought into it. But just to be talking on the phone in the Oval Office that then is connected to NASA, that does seem a bit awkward.
Well, we can say that now because we're watching this in retrospect, like what, 50, 60 years from then. So we can say some of this automatically doesn't add up right away.
Yeah.
But if you were to view this in your time, in the time of the 60s, late 60s, where you're sort of watching this, you believe it because it is just what it is.
That technology.
Because if you assume the case, and you have no reason to doubt the government or whoever's doing this.
Plus, you want to believe it.
Yeah. Then you're going to see that makes sense. He's talking, and the transmission's that fast too. Like it's so fast. Like, but then okay, so that's all the the outside stuff that just really.
You would imagine by now somebody has had to somehow question this
sure
and then
this
clarify this or something. And I'm sure if you dig in down the rabbit hole far enough, there should be some kind of explanation of some kind.
Of this.
Well, I mean, again, we're not exploring things in new territory. If it's been beat up, but it's just crazy that, again, I would be really curious out of 100 people, how many have just sat through and watched this and sort of how that then manifests itself to how large populations of a society will just believe what they want to believe or not necessarily have their attention given to this because it's just not worth their attention. If I'm a busy, lawyer working, 50, 60 hours, and when am I going to think, I should investigate whether the moon landing was real or not? No one's going to care. So it's sort of just tucked away, in history. But all this is the external stuff that just doesn't seem to add up. But what's fascinating, I really liked what he said, though. Like what he said stuck with me, too. And
I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you have done. For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives. And for people all over the world, I am sure that they, too, join with Americans in recognizing what an immense feat this is.
There it was. It's such a beautifully crafted message because it conveys the spirit of achievement of mankind, of humanity doing this.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it says to the rest of the world that they too will join America in celebrating this. If you just listen to how he says it. Now, why that's important, again, it's what's the big deal? All you did was you got to the moon first, but it's the triumph of our ideology beat your ideology. We are a byproduct. The way our society works, the way our economy works, the way we govern, the byproduct of that is us getting to the moon before y'all. And that's why we win. And that's why there was and remember, it's not just these two isolated countries that just, hey, we're better than you. There was a battle over the masses of territory. Why was Vietnam a war? Because there was North and South Vietnam to spread these ideologies, There was a sense of Soviets are gaining ground. They have this country. Now they're that. The North and South Korea type thing. It's like the rest of the world are just these territories to be played with. Like, oh, we get that space. No, you get that space. And it started off with that whole Operation Clip or Paperclip in Germany where you take all these folks away. And now it's like, we have to take them before the Soviets get to them. So that message was all the world too will join America, when you think about the Vietnam War, when you think and why this resonates with me so much is, Dad told me a story about when he was young and how there are these random people like Hmong elders that they'd have guns and they look like they're official. And he was caught up in that war too. But again, our Hmong folks, we were in Laos. We weren't a part of the official Vietnam War. We call it a secret war because it wasn't supposed to be in the books. It never happened. Vietnam was the only war that should have happened because it's what was sanctioned by Congress. But it's like, but Vietnam's not enough for the U.S. There's also the battle for neighboring Laos and stuff. So let's have the secret wars on the side. And so Hmong folks were, recruited by the American government, but also the Soviets recruited Hmong too. And so there was a battle between Hmong people who, there were red Hmong and the blue Hmong or whatever. There was the Soviet Hmong and all that. And Dad was telling me how he would remember the leaders of the American side would come and say, hey, who wants to volunteer today? And all he had to do was just go. He said he was like only 14 or 15 and he wasn't really old enough to fight. But he's like, they would tell Dad that you don't have to fight. You just have to stand in line with these people so it looks like we have enough heads so that then we'll get some compensation and some money for support. Yeah. But you don't actually have to fight. So Dad was just telling me like the circus of not understanding what's actually happening and just being caught up in something. Like just go line up over there. When they say your name or something, just raise your hand and say these words. And then, but for the rest of the day, you're off. And then we'll give you $1 for that. And then he told me that there were these other stories that, caught up with all that happening was that the members of the community would go out and they would go to these battles, like the older men in the community, and they would, be gone for days or something. And they would tell Dad when they returned the story that oftentimes they would meet in a battlefield at night with the opposing Hmong Soviet forces. And they would just sort of shoot at the sky together because to make it sound like they're in battle. Because they don't know what they're fighting for. Yeah. They're just like, and then like, what is this communism? Like, let's just use our ammo up and shoot up at the moon. And they would just use all their ammo up and they come back and maybe there was some actual fighting a little bit here and there, but for the most part, that was it. But that's a microcosm of the divide and conquer of the world, the Soviet versus American Cold War, that even in these Hmong villages, these humble Hmong villages, they don't even got their own country. There's just these Hmong huts and villages in the mountaintops of Laos.
No sense of centralized government or laws or rules, just nomads living off the land, just...
We're recruiting them too. So there's red Soviet Hmong, there's American, pro-America Hmong, there's all, and even they're supposed to fight each other. I'm like... how many Vietnamese were killed in the Vietnam War? Like so many. And so again, I'm trying to tie this all because there's all these dots out there of messaging of the evil at play in this time of year of like us talking about Halloween, but also shady things that just aren't adding right because you think a conversation or that conversation with Nixon, it could be harmless. And it very well could be that that's just the truth. Like this is the way it happened. And it doesn't sound believable because sometimes that's true too. The unbelievable is also believable. But it's like swaying the masses in opinion is like that great evil that I keep seeing that is a recurring theme. I brought up earlier Werner von Braun because he was the head specialist for the rocket propulsion for this Apollo. But then he later developed pancreatic cancer. And he had a few years left, and he developed a relationship with some mentees that he would mentor. And one of them was Carol, I think her name was Carol Rosin. And she became an administrator and a lead executive in the space engineering corporate industry. And she said that she had been like sort of his assistant, Braun's assistant in his last stages of his life. Pancreatic cancer is no joke. It's a death sentence. Obviously, in his role as a high NASA executive and former Nazi or whatever, I'm sure he was put in all these weird, difficult conflict of interest, but he was privy to a lot of the inner workings of what the government was trying to do, and then using him as well, his expertise, his development and research. And he started saying things to Carol that his biggest fears, he's conveyed his fears on towards the end of his life that that the U.S., in order to continue to propel themselves, because in the craze of getting all this technology and getting all the weaponry and building up the science and the knowledge and the technology, the military industrial complex, caught up in so much of that, you have all that, is that the U.S. or the Americans aren't going to be able to like support it. So how do you continue to, get get the train still moving, because there's no wars to be fought. Really, there's a Cold War, or whatever. But that's the thing.
Now, what that led me to was Wernher von Braun, the father of rocketry, who had escaped from Peenemünde, come here with a lot of German scientists. He was now at Fairchild Industries.
Wasn't he one of Hitler's?
Yes, he worked under Hitler, so he really learned the game of how technology can be so destructive. I had a 10-minute meeting scheduled, but it lasted for about 3 hours. And during that time, he said to me, Carol, what you're talking about is real. They are getting ready to put weapons in space. This is not just about violence in the classroom. We need to give these aerospace industries, the military, industrial, lab, university, government, intelligence, inexorably linked complex, something else to do. Besides war, because I, Wernher von Braun, lived under Hitler, I saw what was going on. And we came here to try to collect new ideas and to change the war machine into a space machine.
And so she said that he had said the threats that the U.S. would manufacture, firstly, is the whole the Red Scare, the Cold War with communism, and that became a real thing. You know, it was so like scary to be accused as a communist during that time. So that was the scare. And so we had to build up our arms, the arms race. Everybody remembers that.
Yeah.
But what was fascinating was that she said that he had also said after Russia's done or the Soviets are done or whatever, what's the next sort of manufacturing of a narrative? It's terrorists. It's these crazy countries.
Yeah. Well, for the longest time, that's what the U.S. has done. Is they have to create some kind of nemesis or this ultimate evil that they have to defeat somehow. Yeah, which perpetuates war, perpetuates control of a centralized system. And most conspiracy theorists use that as their sort of, this is the impetus. They use this as the central point of the argument, is that you need an impetus to go to war. And oftentimes that impetus might be manufactured. It might be just set up. And so a conspiracy theorist will try to work backwards from that hypothesis. What was fascinating about what Carol said was that, so there was the Soviets would be the first scare, then the crazies of the countries, these smaller countries like radical terrorism and stuff. That would be the next one. And then she said that Braun had said that they were even tinkering with the idea of an asteroid destroying the Earth, because if that's a real threat, then you can then, appease society by saying, well, we're putting a lot of effort and resources to space technology and do all that. Then the last one is the alien invasion, And these all ultimately became premises for Hollywood movies. For Hollywood movies. The end of the world, how many end of the world conceptual ideas can be. They play part of our culture, part of our society, but she had at least remembered these things, and then first disclosed these things in early spring of 2001. That was the most fascinating piece, because everybody knows about Carol Rosin. If you're a conspiracy theorist, you know about the things that she said, but it was fascinating that she said these things, disclosed them, made them public in 2001, spring of 2001. It's easy to play revisionist history or looking back when you say, yeah, the Soviets were the first part. Well, everybody knows that. The Soviets were the first manufactured narrative that, oh, they're so scary, the commies, so we need to make sure to build up our military. Yeah. Everybody already knew that. But she said that the terrorists would be the next. And this was May, or I don't know if it was May or April, but it was early spring 2001. And then September 11th, 2001. Yeah. I think that was the most fascinating piece for me, because how could she was almost very, she knew ahead of time that this would be a narrative. Now, I haven't heard of anything about the asteroid being a real thing that's materializing as a development, but next week, it's coming next week. The alien thing has already peaked its head. Like, they're taking it seriously, as in, this isn't just for fun now. Like, there's a bunch of cuckoos in alien movies. Now it's being entertained as a serious thing that there could be alien life force. And it's funny how all these things that she had said that von Braun had put into her mind, because he was the one saying that this is what's going to happen. Yeah, I think this is also fascinating, because not only the timing of her disclosure, but who is von Braun? He was a former Nazi. Sometimes when people think of Operation Paperclip, the whole pillaging of Germany, you think you're only pillaging research and development technology.
it would stand to reason that you're going to be enamored with what the Germans were able to accomplish in such a short time, and that you would also glean from the Germans not just their science and technology, but their tactics in every way. Because even though Germany lost and they were evil and everybody accepts that, they were able to achieve big things very effectively, getting the population of people to do things and to coordinate. And so I imagine it stands to reason that not only did you pillage all these former Nazis and bring them into America to apply their wits in science and technology, you probably applied their wits in psychological warfare. You probably applied their wits in a variety of ways and say, this is how it worked in our Nazi regime. This is what you got to do. Because probably a lot of them were in the inner circles or, close to the inner circles of your Joseph Goebbels and Hitler, and they understood what was going on from the inside. You just look at connecting some of those dots, because when you look at history too, there was propaganda and sort of the messaging and narrative prior to the end of World War II. Like, it was during World War II. And what we remember the most is the vilifying of Japanese. Yeah. So this is before they were able to, take Germans and adopt their things. The U.S. has already done a little bit of propaganda, like, the Japanese are bad and blah, and they would draw these deformed figures of Japanese evil. So that was a version of propaganda. But that, honestly, that was like a light version.
Yeah. Well, that was probably at the beginning. The
serious things picked up in all of the craziest shit happening in the world. What I'm seeing is that the pillaging of Germany, from there on, there was light propaganda, but from there on, you pillage their technology, you pillage all that. And you also probably pillage their ideas and mass movement, persuasion, propaganda, because ever since the pillaging, there have been way more pervasive forms of propaganda.
What was
just way more progressive or pervasive forms. And they're not just messaging about, the key is this though, the difference is this. It's not just like, we want you to feel this way about this sentiment, about this attitude, whether we're pro-war, against war, whether you like this policy or you don't like this policy. It's not that. It's built in these catastrophic events that are embedded into your memory forever. That's the evil behind it, is that these events happen, 9/11, it will be remembered forever. They happen, and then that is usually the catalyst for to then shape opinion. So there's evil in all these places. Something may have happened. Like, let's just say there's perspective that 9/11 were just the terrorists and et cetera. Yeah. And then the Bush administration perhaps made it just an opportunistic thing to say, well, let's just, be opportunistic about this, go to war with Afghanistan, and then do all these other things we want to do. That's a cynical outlook, but even that's not as cynical or evil as the idea that this was all by design too. The attacks were by design, the buildings falling apart, and then still using that as the narrative to now spin it in other ways too.
Have you seen the video of Building 7 falling?
Well, yeah, I have seen it. Yeah, that was on Professor.
Can you just put it on real quick? Like I want you just to watch this with your own eyes in the same way, in the perspective that we kind of watched the moon landing. Yeah, like. Any rational person watching this, if you just watch it, remember, no plane has hit this building at all. Supposedly the building fell near it, and they said that because of the wreckage and the heat and all that kind of stuff, that this building collapsed. Again, was not on the official 9/11 report. Not giving any kind of recognition, and even to this day, there's a lot of people who don't even know about Building 7. It's like one of the biggest attacks in U.S. soil has happened, and a lot of people don't know Building 7 at all. And then when you actually pull it up and you watch this video of the collapse of Building 7, I don't know how any rational person can look at that and not go, that's demolition.
Or they'll say, it is what it is, makes sense.
How can you not question that? I mean, it's just,
wait a minute.
Buildings like this just don't fall.
Did the building actually get hit by a plane?
No.
Why is it on fire?
Why is it on fire? Or what's the explanation as to why it's on fire? I haven't looked at the details.
I forget which institution finally made a statement about it, but the other buildings, World Trade Center, the other World Trade Center's buildings have fallen near it, and which caused wreckage that caused the fire.
Which then contributed to it.
Yeah, to Building 7.
But only that building fell out of that whole
area. Yeah. Now you got to keep in mind, you go down the rabbit hole and you understand the significance of Building 7, it gets even crazier. You know,
sure.
like
I have it.
everything that Building 7 holds, all the secrets, all the information, all the financing, everything was in Building 7 that had to be destroyed if this was to be pulled off, let's just say, quote unquote, inside job or whatever it might be. You know, like Building 7 cannot stand because there's too much information within Building 7 that would make it too revealing. So here we go. Suddenly the top just falls there.
That collapses.
See how all the
Now
windows are blowing up, being blown
from
out,
outside.
right?
Yeah.
Then boom,
Then
the
bam.
entire building falls almost at free fall on its own footprint. Like that doesn't happen. Like if there was a structural failure, if there's something wrong, buildings will go bloom, 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 or a top piece will fall.
That's how a
for it to
demolition
fall.
happens.
That's
Yeah,
exactly
that's
a
what
demolition.
yeah.
And the whole demolition argument and the whole idea of that, if it was a demolition, then obviously somebody set the demolition up. You know, then who was it that put the bombs in place? You know, in pretext of everything in the events that happened that morning.
Yeah.
Even if the planes flew into the other buildings, then, you know, and again, there's the question, if you even look at all the other buildings, World Trade Center 1 and 2 or 3 or whatever, when those buildings fall, they fall at free fall into their own footprint. So when you actually see that, like if the plane hit way up here, if something were to fail, like a building, especially a building that was made to actually uphold like a plane hitting it, but even then a building would fall like and break in different pieces, or big debris would break off like this, or the top piece would fall. It's like Jenga, you know, like imagine pulling a Jenga piece at the bottom and the whole thing just goes perfectly. No, it kind of like falls over, you know, like it doesn't just go completely down unless the main cores that hold the building up was, you know, by perfect demolition lined up to make it collapse and fall on its own footprint in that same way. Now, you can argue again over and over that, you know, the heat of the plane and so forth made the other two buildings fall, but Building 7, that no plane ever hit it, and because of fires, the building fell. Like if you just look at it, like when I first discovered this and I first discovered Building 7, people talked about it. I watched the video myself in my own eyes, and it just looked like a building fell. Like I just couldn't see the possibility of that. Like, why isn't anyone talking about this? Like, why isn't this getting more attention? And even to this day, it's like they're hiding like something within Building 7. And why isn't the whole world shocked at that?
Because the whole world is just, they're fatigued by the conversation. Because even folks that are skeptical of conspiracy theories, or folks that just believe the narrative that was given to them, it just doesn't matter to them anymore. And that's the problem, though, because, but isn't that just like you just sort of being a part of that? There's one thing to be ignorant and not know, but then there's another thing to just continue to maintain a certain perspective about things that have happened with its implications still to come, about what's to come, about whether we should be vigilant about certain things, or maybe we're too vigilant, maybe we're hyper reactive. Those are all sort of like the spectrum of how we view our worldview right now, whether we are in a state of paranoia because we're deep rabbit hole conspiracy theorists and all this stuff doesn't work. That's maybe one large frequency. And then the other side frequency is just this sort of being complicit in it by seeing and just accepting what is and going along with the narrative because you're too busy with work and stuff. And so
I was really big into the whole 9/11 conspiracy thing from the very beginning. I watched, you know, endless different underground documentaries like Loose Change and so forth, and the dozens that were in there that really questioned the entire narrative of what happened. And there's a lot of really good questions that were brought up, and I became one of those conspiracy theorists. Like that was the beginning of my journey of going down the rabbit holes, was because of the events of 9/11. But what I do recall remembering over the next decade of events after 9/11, you know, they're called the truthers, you know, 9/11 truthers.
Sure, yeah.
The amount of times that it was brought up, the amount of times it was brought to the attention of the mainstream media, it was brought up with people yelling at events and speeches and so forth. Never before, at least within my lifetime, was there an issue that people were so emotionally attached to it. Like they shunned it. For you just to ask a question like, how did the buildings fall? What happened to Building 7? Or what's going on here? What happened to the plane that went into the Pentagon? Once those questions were brought, it was just this hatred towards that group of people that were asking questions more than anything else. And that has carried on for years and years, even to this day,
That's the sort of the sentiment. It's resentful if you question it. It's people are fatigued by the questioning. They just like move on, man. And
then it's gone to the point nowadays, if it's brought up, it's kind of like people are open to like, because all the heightened emotions, because when that happened during 2001, like everybody was shocked, everybody was hurt, everybody was ready to enlist themselves and go right out there and chase after these terrorists and kill them. It was a united country immediately after that. But and then that's why there was such a sentiment to go like, how dare you, like even question what happened, like the terrorists did it,
because it was the most patriotic America's probably felt in a long time, as well as being united. And so the question that is an attack against your own ideology, the values of American as a united front, that the American government would never do. So like what are you? You're like some cuckoo, that's going down these rabbit holes. Just like, you need to stop with this narrative. And again, it goes back to my thing is like, some folks aren't necessarily looking for reasons. They're just discovering things they can't understand. And so that attacks the fabric of who they are. The Americans that are united, by questioning it, attacks that fabric. And again, that sort of same motif is still at play today. When left and right attack each other, with with the climate of animosity today, questioning the left or the right's disposition about certain things in life, it attacks the fabric of who they are. And there's that emotional response behind it. And it's just like,
but it's crazy to me, like how much that emotional response is more than enough for someone to not believe their own eyes or their own ears, like for you to watch a building like that just fall at free fall, never seen before, like how do you not question that, that you would deny your own eyes, your own logic to say, terrorists.
I think they're. I still think it's terrorists. Everybody probably has that threshold of like the idea of like, maybe the video is enough for some people to be like, that's not right. Something's not right here. Some people need to see way more, and they need more than just that video. They need maybe another footage of someone planting the bombs the night before. Kind of like the Dave Chappelle skit, right? I need to see R. Kelly. His mom was there, and he had that, or his grandma was there. That's my grandson. They need to see their threshold is they need to see or whoever's planting the bombs there. They need to see all this other stuff for them to finally say, okay, yeah, that's not right. I believe that something's off here. That building is not it didn't fall as a byproduct of the fire and the debris. Something happened there. So everybody has that threshold to a degree, but your threshold is usually governed by, again, that original disposition of whether you're leaning a certain way or not. And, and I keep going back to the theme of like this whole chilling evil, is because isn't that really what great evil is, in my perspective, especially it's very applicable to today's time, is that it's just very evil to sway people emotionally for your gain. It's very evil to just like be a manipulator of people's realities. It's kind of crazy. And I say that because it sounds like I'm describing some dark tyrant out there doing. No, these are people on YouTube. People might accuse me of that. These are people on YouTube where I will watch some folks and they're like, you can tell it's a contrived message that they want you to believe a certain thing, and that they're spinning certain messages in so many ways. It's funny because like I was browsing my YouTube feed about J.D. Vance's interview with Stephanopoulos. Is that what
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that his last name?
George Stephanopoulos.
Is it?
Yes.
Or Stephanopoulos, the Full House character. But yeah,
No,
funny
I
'cause-
think he's the woolly mammoth on Sesame Street. No.
no. Snuffleupagus.
Oh, Snuffleupagus.
But anyways, everybody knows that interview, and it's just funny because I like playing around with both sides of my feed. Where I watch very right leaning and then very left leaning,
See,
and
each
then
point.
the AI will now, or the algorithm spits one video. It's just crazy how you can just juxtapose those two thumbnails of the same interview.
Yeah.
One says J.D. Vance embarrassed by Stephanopoulos. And cuts him off because he, and then when you watch whatever content, it's like they're saying, and they're just shitting on JD Vance so bad, like he's doing all this to try to avoid. And then the next video, in the very same screen is, JD Vance owns the but that's the obsession with manipulation. And again, I just keep going back to this original seed of this manipulation and hate, and that's the Joseph Goebbels leadership in Nazi regime. I've spent some time just looking at his work, his influence on the whole totalitarian movement, the role of propaganda there, because I've never been fascinated by this until not only because I just feel like it reverberates so much today. Every message being so emotionally driven. I mean, here's some actual quotes from Joseph Goebbels that describes his methodology. He says, at one point, a group of Jews was arrested for doing something, and he says, it serves the Jews right, but we don't say anything about it in the news. We're as truthful as it's useful. So it's about the whole, we're letting people know some things, not letting them know other things. Propaganda is an art like painting. It's not the image that comes closest to reality that has the greatest value. No, it's the one that triggers the greatest emotions.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we're seeing on our feed 24/7 today? We achieve all goals with agitation and threats. This is to create the false narrative, the impetus of why we need to go to war with Poland, which sort of started the war. They made up that there were attacks on Germans. There were even deaths in Bromberg. That's good. That's good. Let's build that up. Let's increase the number of victims tenfold and let's repeat it over and over again. The simpler and the more primitive, the more effective. Invent catchphrases. We hammer it over and over and over again until everyone knows that the Poles committed atrocities. Like a propagandist, we have an intention, but it must be so virtuously concealed that this intention fulfills you without you realizing it. That's really the core of what an agenda-based messaging is.
Yeah. All of these sound very relevant in today's society.
Yeah, it just seems like it's being painted. And again, if American Soviets just rooted out all the best of what Germany did, then you have this wave of secret CIA operatives. Even my own people were part of this secret operative, secrets, et cetera, swaying public opinion to get you to this. That's the world like we're living, we've always lived in, but I can't help but feel that, again, the seed of evil that Joseph Goebbels, again, propaganda exists to a certain extent before Joseph Goebbels, but I'm saying that he was this pinnacle character that drove the notion of propaganda to tenfold, to areas that got people brainwashed, like really brainwashed to do things, to sort of lose their whole identity. That's totalitarianism, is that whole giving, not just your political leaning, your whole identity is that.
Yeah.
It's so evil because I just always recall and remember, I was shocked because when I was younger learning about World War II, the only thing I remembered about Joseph Goebbels was that he stayed in the bunker with Adolf Hitler to the last battle, whatever, and when Berlin was being taken over, and Adolf Hitler killed himself because he couldn't face the reality, and so did Joseph Goebbels. But his wife was also there, and she decided to kill herself too. And they decided it was best to kill their 6 children. Their 6 children who are very young. And I thought that if there isn't anything more evil than that.
Yeah.
That you say that in our totalitarian mindset, there is no reality if we are on the losing end. So even my children don't get to be in that reality. I'm going to make this decision for them.
Yeah.
It's so wicked and evil. And yet it was terribly effective. And I can't help but think that the the wave of these questionable things that have happened in America since the CIA probably adopted a lot of these tactics.
Yeah.
And before, I get to the point where it's like, man, this is a stretch. You're like way like grasping for stuff. You have this, but I mean, there's just blatant, obvious things like, why did the Vietnam War start? The Gulf of Tonkin incident. You know? These are just examples. They're night and day. Like they lied about these
The Gulf of Tonkin is widely accepted.
Yeah, now
that it was
that's
a false
accepted
flag.
by. So, in what stage in history did America actually stage things and kill people to then start something? It hasn't. I feel like it hasn't happened until post World War II, where the adoption of tactics and psych warfare on some level. And I'm saying this because it's still alive and well today. And it may not just be your CIA operatives probably doing it today. There's probably them, but the whole world's doing it. Countries are doing it to us. America's doing it to itself. We're doing it to other countries. Just ordinary folks like us are doing it to each other, you know, to our families, and just swaying your inner circle, outer circles to say that I have the best opinion about everything. You need to look at it like this. And it's gone so evil, man. So I think of that, the vision of it, like there's children dying. And again, dad of 3 kids, that just breaks my heart so much. I can't envision the depth of evil for you to go to a place to do that. But it is still so effective. And let's use some of that and get people emotionally riled up, sway the masses for these messages. And so I can't help but think, but von Braun, he wasn't a propagandist or part of that team. But if you're going to use von Braun for his rocket science technology, it stands to reason that so much more was also adopted in methodology. Because after that, the PSYOP was way more pervasive to the point where catastrophes were happening. And now they're happening again today. We don't know who do we really know the real story behind who would try to assassinate Charlie Kirk and Donald Trump and the Minnesota Red? Like, this stuff is still fresh, but we don't know. But that's the world we live in now, where we're going to be given a narrative. We're going to be using that to spin the evil in so many ways for our gain. And so that's like,
it's kind of weird, and we see it happening all the time, even now today. And the numerous amount of things and the rabbit hole that the Charlie Kirk recent assassination has drummed up to as well. And the amount of questions, because a lot of things aren't being answered, and a lot of people are asking some really relevant questions that don't make sense. Like, why was the crime site completely, construction over and changed over? Why didn't Charlie Kirk, one of the most prominent figures and voices, where it was large enough to be able to celebrate him on a world scale, pretty much after, he died at his funeral, but yet an autopsy wasn't done on his body. Things like that just really don't add up. And there's a lot of questioning that goes on. And again, the questions also lead to ask what was the intent, and then what was really happening behind things as the so forth, but like, I can only imagine, like, you brought up the Gulf of Tonkin. We talk about 9/11. We talk about these major, particularly false flag events. War is hell, like, how do you convince your countrymen and our sons and daughters, like, yeah, we're going to go to war, like, pick up a gun, enlist yourself, go into a foreign land, and you're going to kill people, like, with your guns, you're going to kill people, like, nobody wants to do that. So how do you convince people to do that? It's the only way is to unite under a banner of some kind of, like,
to change the reality.
Yeah. To say, hey, these are the ultimate evil, and you're here defending our freedoms. You're here defending our beliefs. And without this, and if you fail, then we fail and the country falls. And it's that level of severity that we need to win this at all costs, and everybody needs to support you at all costs. I mean, you look at all the veterans that come back, and look how the U.S. treats them, like, there's so many homeless veterans on the streets every single day. All the homeless people, they're not, you get this like this ideology of, oh, they're heroes, you know, great, you know, let's all clap for them. But then after that, like, oh, fuck it, you know, whatever happens, like we don't care for them. There's not great health care and you know and a great life that they're coming back to after all the PTSD that they're going through and the killing and the fighting and the drugs and the crazy shit that they've experienced and you know over in other countries. But that's what happens. So you just gotta somehow keep convincing the public to go, keep enlisting, and then when we need you and when we want to, we can pull any trigger at any time to convince people to do that. You know, and it's a very challenging thing to convince people. You know,
It is so challenging, and you can't convince people to fuel a military-industrial complex with no reason or no tragedy or no situation that would warrant that. So then you create the situation.
you have to.
Again, like it's already cynical enough to say that a situation happened organically, and then the powers that were just decided to capitalize on the situation. That's already a pretty bad way to look at it. But man, there's so many things right now where you have to question the incident. Another little anecdote story is the Reichstag fire. And I bring that up, and that's just one of those little events, and you'll learn in your U.S. or your history books. But the Reichstag fire was in 1933. It's the Parliament building. It's like seeing in the U.S., it's like seeing in D.C., the Congress is building on fire, right? Mm-hmm. And so Hitler and his coalition of partners, they used the opportunity to claim the fire was a communist plot. Now, there's no historical true to know if this was true or not, but eventually someone was accused for it. It was something that's emboldened Hitler and his regime to say, we're here to protect Germany. And the German people were in this uproar and scared and paranoid, kind of like the way they felt like being attacked by the scare of communism. Mm-hmm. And so with that, the state of scare in place, that it allowed the public to buy into this notion of the enabling act for Adolf Hitler, which means Adolf Hitler at the time was just chancellor. That's sort of like second to, he's like the hand of the king, you know. Mm-hmm. And the king, or the president at the time, Hindenburg, was like older in his later stage, but he had the final say and stuff. But then the president would write in decrees into stuff and just allow, then Hitler, you just take over. I'm going to give you the power to just do stuff without Congress approval, because there was a democracy actually at the constitutional democracy in place at the time of Germany during that time. And so Hitler had to navigate his way through this democracy. He couldn't just force his way in, but he had to navigate his way. So that enabling act, because Germany was so in this uproar of fear and paranoia, it was palatable to say, hey, let's give the chancellor the power to say, I have to pass laws for expediency's sake. And that led to him just taking over and like shutting down political opposition and, you know, really like for real, censoring the media, not like this threat of censoring the media, but actually made sure that a bunch of these news outlets were terminated. Yeah. So what I'm saying is this. In their motif, catastrophe breeds a sense of instability, which creates the vacuum for someone to say, hey, this is what needs to be done now. Mm-hmm. And if that happened there and it worked, and I don't know if they planted the Reichstag fire or anything like that, I'm not saying that. It could have naturally happened, and maybe they were just opportunistic. But the playbook, I feel like it's happening a lot now. Like, and I hate saying that, but if the precedence was that the Gulf of Tonkin was a blatant, fabricated, catastrophic event where the U.S. ships were being attacked, and later found out it was just a blatant, like, sort of, it was made up so that we can congressionally get approval to get our boots in the ground in Vietnam and start winning the ideology war back, you know? If that precedent's already taken place, then how many other tragedies are there that are sort of palatable to certain groups in hindsight to allow them to say, hey, we need them. I mean, there's a reason why the American military-industrial complex is the way it is. So I'm just tying everything back to the origin of the seed of evil, Joseph Goebbels, this totalitarian emotional provocation and mass control of people. Isn't that like the epitome of like the joy of evil? Like that, you would enjoy that the most if you were Satan. I feel like that would be you would indulge in your flesh, you would indulge in all these things, you indulge in your power, but really the greatest satisfaction is the manipulation of minds. And the seed was there, and And then the reverberating events throughout history just continue to show us that there's just way too many questions unanswered. And people's lives are being lost. Like, people are being killed. People are just used as pawns for X, Y, and Z. And the common sentiment is that we just need to group together and figure it out and move on, but tend to our daily tasks and just kind of like move on from there and accept the narrative of what we've been given. But that just makes us so blind for what's ahead.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just going to speculate about the whole Carol Rosin saying that von Braun said the America is going to use Russia or Soviets as the first manufactured threat. Then America is going to use terrorism, and that came to be true. Mm-hmm. We haven't heard of this hoopla of any asteroid, but now the aliens are starting to creep. It's being posited as a real legitimate thing. This is no longer like there's a bunch of these crazies that thought they saw a UFO with terrible. Mm-hmm. But now in the world where everyone has a cell phone with 4K technology, there's going to be. And my prediction is this.
I still have yet to see a HD video one.
Yeah, but I'll say this is my prediction, that if I'm going to follow the line of Carol's thinking that these are all manufactured threats, mm-hmm. that substantiate a sense of fear and then substantiate a sense of like we need to continue to defend ourselves and pour money into the technology and industrial complex to defend ourselves from this. If I'm going to follow that line of thinking, then what's going to happen is that there will be a lot of talk about aliens, mm-hmm. the potential. There will be some footage that looks very legitimate. And I know currently right now there's sort of things floating out there that look legitimate. I haven't vetted it or looked at any of them, but we'll continue to see that. But what'll never happen is a very obvious and an overt reality that they're actually there. Mm-hmm. Meaning they're not just going to come out of their pods and say greetings, because then that would give us the real truth.
Yeah.
We're going to be pressed with the narrative, and it's going to be sort of left to society to fall one way or the other and how we're going to process that. That's how it's going to play out. That whatever it's going to be scary enough. Maybe we'll see footage of drone and this big building blows up somewhere in the world to sort of connect the dots that, now there's a real thing. These aren't just cool things in the sky that we can't identify. We saw that crazy thing in the sky and the building blew up, and there will be no understanding of it. And so it's going to prompt something. It's going to be a catalyst for something. And there's going to be varying opinion, but you'll never see an overt reality of plain as day, this is a UFO, this is an alien, and that alien is attacking the building. Like, you'll never
The only
see that.
way that's even possible, you can't see that with just video. The only way I can imagine that being possible is an acceptance that, okay, there is, intelligent life that's visited us from outside of the planet Earth, right? For that to be accepted on a world scale would be, here's the HD video of it, and it's still right there. And people can go outside and actually still see it in the sky, live footage, and there's witnesses everywhere that are watching it like, there's this gigantic spaceship above my house right now, and everyone's out here. There's thousands of people staring at it. It's all over the news. Like, that's the only way it can be acceptable,
Well, even let's play out that scenario even more. Let's just say there was something so visible and people saw something, and then it just disappeared. Again, it still proposes a narrative that people might still be skeptical. Like, meaning, I saw something with my eyes, but, how come it just doesn't make itself readily known? Like, how come the aliens just don't come out? And so that there's, like, at what threshold do you have this deniability?
Was it a hologram? Was it set up?
Because it'll always be that. Whatever the illusions are of the past, the Reichstag fire, the 9/11, the World Trade Centers, all this, nothing is just blatant blatant fact and truth that are objective and undeniable. Everything sort of looks like this, sounds like this, missing this, and that'll be the same way the whole alien thing. It'll probably be on a level of that we'd be surprised ourselves. Like I said, if we went outside and even saw the spaceship, we're like, oh shit, this is real, and then it disappeared. We'll be convinced. But then that might be the level of that's how they're going to get us to increase our threshold sort of for believability. They have to make it that believable. So then now we're all bought in, But who knows if that technology exists? What if you could project a bunch of UFO looking things as just projections in the world and whatever, and just get people bought in like that. But I'm just gonna say like that history shows that you're just dividing lines of people, manipulating people one way or the other.
Yeah.
It's rare that things are just true, like I brought up earlier with the Vietnam War, the Gulf incident, because that's the rare incident where it's just like, it's universally agreed. Like this isn't like, well, it could have been this. No, like they effed up, they lied. That's a rare thing though. All these other incidents still are open for debate, and JFK and all these things.
The Gulf of Tonkin incident, when you were talking about and you looked that up, how long did it take for them to finally come to terms to accept that as objective reality?
I
Who
don't know.
admitted it? How did that come out?
It's on the Pentagon Papers. It's actually a very fascinating sort of unraveling of how a lot of the secrets of the CIA and the things that led up to the Vietnam War were revealed.
Yeah.
A lot of this is just secret cover stuff. Again, people conspiring, CIA conspiring for this stuff.
But did somebody just one day just said, "Hey, you know what? Let's release it."
I don't remember the name.
It was
he's actually a really well-known person because he was a part of, and I forget his name right now, talking about that forgetfulness, but he died recently, and he was the one responsible for releasing the Pentagon Papers because that was something that he wanted to do, and so a lot of that was revealed. And so, again, our next stage of alien or asteroid or new COVID-19, it's going to be things that we're going to wrestle with in a most ambiguous way. And it's only going to just, in our media and our technology and our devices are going to just drive us a wedge down one way or the other. And things haven't been the same since the very aggressive and mad genius of Joseph Goebbels. And that's unfortunate that that's the case,
Yeah. You want to know what I think the asteroid was? I think for me, probably COVID. That was COVID. Maybe the asteroid maybe represented this idea of the end of the world, end of times.
Global existentialism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so let's take everything into perspective in regards to the narratives, the psyops, the influence, and so forth. Like, okay, COVID happened. Yeah, a lot of people died. And there's record of that. And that's on a world global scale. Mm-hmm. COVID wasn't some manufactured fear of some kind, some false flag or some kind of fake thing. Again, the origins of COVID still in its own kind of thing, but let's not even focus on that yet. Yeah. That everybody's still arguing over that. Mm-hmm. But let's just say, okay, COVID was very real. A lot of people died globally. But if we're talking about the idea of, control, if there are entities and the powers behind all of this that has this sense of control, even if COVID was a natural thing, for the first time in the history, I would have to say maybe mankind, that the entire globe froze on a dot.
Yeah.
Every single participating country that has any kind of first world communication, government, completely froze. Businesses completely froze. The world stood still in under one entire belief of something that was happening. And again, I'm not trying to say, the powers to be and they faked it all and they caused it.
You're just saying what was.
Yeah, what was, but what does it tell them now? Like that was possible, that they could do that, that power exists, that they could actually control the entire world on a dot, that fear can be there if they wanted to, where they can actually control every single person on the planet and just freeze it. I mean, that's a big flex. That's huge, And if that's possible, then what does that lead to? And again, with the entire COVID year and all that stuff, I can't say enough that nothing's ever felt the same ever since that happened. And I think that was probably, at least within my lifetime, greater than any other event on a global national scale was COVID. COVID that year,
how pervasive it was.
Yeah. The world was upside down after that. Nothing's ever felt oddly the same anymore. You know, there's just something else that just doesn't.
There's no sense of normalcy. Since then. Yeah.
There isn't.
There's just sort of moving on.
Yep.
It's moving on, and every day is sort of a moving on. But to your point, like whether or not the origins of COVID were from some natural organic thing or planted nefariously or an accident that's being covered up, that doesn't matter that much now. But to your point, what matters is that the authorities to be were able to say, because of that, we're shutting down the world. And it worked.
And it worked.
That's kind of...
And because that worked, they have the ability now to know, like, it's possible. You know, with our day, you know, with the technology that we have today and the capabilities and the power of and trust that we have within the hierarchies of the highest echelon of government and business and everything else, they have that button available to them to push if they wanted to. It's been created. You know, it's never like I can't think of another time in history of mankind that's happened.
Well, the world stood still.
Where the world stood still. That is the day.
By authority.
Yep.
By somebody in authority. Yeah.
Because that's never happened before, and for me, that was, I don't know. I look back on that as just astonishing. It still blows my mind to this day.
Yeah. Because you also look back and you recall. Everyone recalls sort of their experience, where they were when they were watching the news, how they were huddled into their space, how they had to quarantine. It is this mass influence of masses for whatever reason, and that'll be an indelible imprint on history now. And maybe it's too soon to understand kind of what this is unfolding to, or the reason behind it. And we very well may discover that, again, these things it was just a tragic thing that happened to happen.
I remember I was at home watching the death ticker on YouTube.
Yeah.
There was a channel that just showed all the death tickers of all the people that were dying around globally. I don't know how accurate it was, but I just watched it and I was like, damn, it's fucking crazy. And then I remember I had to go out and go grab some grocery stuff. And I had to go down to the grocery store. And there was only, what did they call it? Essential businesses or something like that would be the only ones that would be open. You know, like grocery stores, like big ones like Walmart or whatever else, Target. And I remember going down to the grocery store, and because there was so limited amount of only certain places that could open, there were so many people, and because of the precaution around catching COVID, there was a line that stretched all the way out. And you gotta keep in mind, I'm in California where it's densely populated too. There were just lines and lines of people all the way down the street trying to get into one store, you know, and I had to go wait in line. And it truly felt like the end of the world, because it was so surreal. Because I was like, yeah, this is the streets and the blocks and the stores that I drive on every single day. And now it's all empty except for lines of people outside of these stores waiting to get goods. And, you know, toilet paper was gone and everybody's fighting over the toilet paper and talking about that at that time. All the essential goods like milk and everything, like people were like stocking up. And there's just this gigantic line down the street. And I'm just standing at Walmart trying to get inside of Walmart. And I just thought to myself, like, this is so surreal. Like, this is like, is this really happening? It really felt like the end of the world, or we're like in World War II or something, and there's only a rational amount of good that's left, you know, and everybody's just fighting, and you know, to get as much rations as they possibly could. And I don't know. For me, that like, I wake up from that and I still think about that moment in COVID, and like, wow. Like, I can't even believe that happened in our lifetime. Yeah,
it was almost like in the whole meta-universe reality, that was a pivotal moment that branched into a new reality or something. A lot of these big moments. Yeah. You either continue down the path where there was no COVID-19, or you can, like in the past, you continue down a path where there was no atom bomb ever invented or something like that. And then, but with COVID-19, it feels like it thrusts us into a different reality because things just aren't the same. You know, in a variety of ways, both on a global geopolitical level, but also even in your own backyard, communities. Yeah, your own communities. Things aren't the same with families, with attitudes about things, and so, that whole parallel reality shift. A lot of people feel that way. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on or whatever. A lot of folks just feel like there's just something not the same since then. And then if you were to aid that with, well, then how does the messaging align with that then? Well, we were on the receiving end of a lot of very aggressive messaging. I mean, aggressive may not be the word, but very strong messaging that you need a quarantine, that to not do that is sort of deserving of a public shame because you're not doing your part. You're being a risk to others. And you're also being a risk if you refuse the vaccination. And so there was a public sway with that too. And I'm not trying to say that anything with a public message now is indicative of some sort of nefarious, evil propaganda messaging. So not every message is that. But when you know that the message is perpetuated over and over, the repeating, the whole...
Well, they wanted conformity. There's a sense of conformity of like, yeah, you need to conform or else you have that public shame, that public like, hey, you know, like you really don't care about other people kind of feeling, you know, that was pressured on you. And you got to remember, like people lost their jobs because they couldn't. They chose not to be vaccinated. People couldn't travel. People couldn't do a lot of things. You know, it wasn't just this public shame. They actually set things. There were consequences behind making some of those decisions too that really pushed down on people too. So it wasn't just people just shaming each other. I mean, there were actual consequences that came around with that, and there was a sense of control. And again, I don't say those things in a way where it's like, it was just evil people, or saying no, people were paranoid, people were scared, and people were trying to act in the best interests of the overall good.
And there were people dying too. So,
Yes.
So it's not like it's just all fabricated.
But at the end of the day, it demanded people to give up a lot of their own rights, their beliefs, and to just conform into this ideology of like, this is the best route. Because at the same time, you can't even question it. Sometimes it wasn't even the best, like this whole 6 feet apart kind of thing. And then, you know, when the vaccinations came out, like I was told like, the face mask is the most obvious thing too. That people are driving in the cars with face mask on, and it was just kind of getting ridiculous. And then the vaccination came out, and it was like, I remember the first time the vaccination came out, they were saying something that the vaccination prevents you from getting COVID. And then I heard like, no, that's not the case. The vaccination prevents you from passing COVID. And then I heard like, no, that's not the case either. The vaccination lowers the symptoms that if you catch COVID, it won't be life-threatening. You know, so it was kind of like, okay, which one is it? You know, like, I don't even know. Messaging. And all these mixed, and it wasn't like it was intentional. It was like they really didn't know. Like there was just this mixed messaging of people being confused, and again, we're relying on all the so-called experts, you know, to try and give us what's really going on, you know. But you're just kind of, it was turmoil, you know, like no one knew like what the hell was going on, you know, during that time. And then in the aftermath of everything, I mean, not just to keep leading it on. It's like the only thing that got left over from all of this was this hyper extensive focus on political arenas. It was just all of a sudden what's existed now on the aftermath of everything. And again, maybe it's just the Trump factor, but now it's left with just people hating each other's guts daily, and like with this whole ideology of like left and right, and you know, like you're evil and you're racist and all this stuff, and then that's the news feed now, and that's what's left over. And then now, I mean, again, today is the No Kings March Part 2 day. People are out there marching, and I haven't got the chance to look updates to see exactly how influential or how many people showed up to that, you know, on a national global scale. I haven't seen any videos or anything there, but just the idea of that, you know, like that there's these gigantic movements of protests of people going out in the streets, and like what is going on in the world, you know, like like I like even the Bush era, the Obama era, like that didn't happen back then, you know, like I don't remember. I mean, there were protests, but like this united front of people marching on the streets again against this whole idea that we have a sinister tyrant who's going to end the country or something, you know, like on this level, like they're saying President Trump is a certain level of evil and the end of democracy at this point in time. I don't think there was another president that they said that about, you know, like Obama wasn't blamed at least on a large ideology scale.
Yeah, no, not nearly to this scale.
Yeah,
I know what you're
of course, there's going to be these individual people, you know, like the
if you were
fringe.
aware of it, then
Exactly.
Yeah.
That you may feel or think that, but like as a collective ideology that, you know, like this is the greatest threat to democracy. Like this has never happened before, you know? Like, am I wrong? Like, I don't know my history. Was any other president hated this much or on this level of
No, well, if you count it and you value it by the attempts the impeachment attempts, the putting him in jail, the assassination attempts, the calling him a fascist and trying to get him out of office, no King's marches, the amount of protests.
the around the clock
as a
mass
president,
media.
that's unprecedented sort of opposition from a group. At least I think, again, I'm not an American historian or anything, but I would think it would be easy to remember if there was another president that
Was
had
hated
that
this
much. Yeah, it was hated that much.
On this level. And again, I would be more open to really exploring a lot of what they're trying to say if I can see firsthand examples of major things that have really had major consequences to the overall good of the country. You know, like people can argue like, yeah, you know, the immigration thing, they're collecting people off the streets and stuff like that and different things. There's a debate and there's an argument about that. But like, I'm saying like on a level of like Nazi level, you know, of I'm just going to destroy and kill my opponents and we're just going to go and take over countries and just invade, you know, like I haven't at least seen that on my end.
Well, it's the most ambiguous story happening in front of our very eyes, meaning everything happening can be interpreted both ways in very convincing fashion. Everything Trump's doing looks exactly fascist for X, Y, and Z reasons. And everything a radical left might be doing looks just like totalitarianism in its own sort of recruitment and people who are feeling like they're caught up in this wave movement of undoing something and saying things like, yeah, democracy's at threat and getting so emotionally violent and worked up about it too.
Yeah.
And that's the chilling factor we live in, because what is the sort of sense of resolve and pacifying of both sides right now to at least have some sort of dialogue? I don't know, because it doesn't matter if you try to use because everybody's going to resort to their logic. Well, if you hear my process and deduce this, then Trump is a fascist. If you hear my process and deduce it, then Trump is not a fascist. That's what I say. It doesn't matter, because you can do that equally both ways, and that's what I'm saying. But that's sort of like no longer the problem now. The problem is really like there's something. What's the underlying theme behind so much of the vitriol? What's the underlying theme behind that? There's a lot of factors. It's not just messaging. It's if we take a seed of Joseph Goebbels and algorithmically plant that into people's phones, that's what's happening too. You know, you want emotionally provocative messages that say, you know, Trump's a racist, and here's why. You want emotionally provocative messages that make radical left look like buffoons and et cetera. You're going to be fed what you want. That's why I mentioned earlier the whole the videos of the juxtaposition of those two videos. That's what's happening today. I mean, it's not a stretch to say that. And I'll say that the whole seed of the emotional arousing of things that was planted in Joseph Goebbels that made him effective is what's happening today. As long as our attention is captured enough to continue feeding it, that's what it'll be, you know. And
Do you think it could be just the consequences of the level of technology today too? Just being able to outreach. Everybody has a computer and a screen in front of them in their own pocket. That outreach or that propaganda or whatever the psyop is easily accessible to every single person in the entire world right now at this point. And that's why in the aftermath of everything, and you look at the consequences of it, like people, you're seeing the effect of it. It's so effective. Sure. It's working so well now. Yeah. Whereas before, like you had to wait for certain broadcasting or wait for certain programs to be able to get you that information, to feed you that propaganda or feed you that narrative to make you feel or react or think a certain way. But now it's just instantaneous. Yeah. And this is the effect of the technology just being so improved and so effective on it.
And even when there was a time of aggressive propagandizing in, you know, the Cold War era, era, you'd have probably messaging of the Red Scare, and you would receive that through messaging of newspaper or news feed, or they had fireside chats, radio stuff. And that would be a small portion of your day. And then you would get scared by whatever messaging that was, if the propaganda worked. And then you'd have the opportunity to talk about it with your family and talk about it with, people, and just kind of like, what do you think about that? And let's interpret it. Not the case today. Everybody's just on their own device, not talking about these things.
Yep.
They're on their own device, just consuming the message, whatever that is, over and over and over again until
But I can only
they're
imagine.
rewired.
I can only imagine the powers to be who actually pulls the strings back and forth between this battle back and forth, right? They obviously know, like, that's the battlefield right there, is the social media. It's the media, the alternative media outside of TV, radio, and so forth right now. They know that that's the battleground. They know that that's the game within where they need to play, to provide their influence, to inject whatever ideas and thoughts is really in the alternative world because of that accessibility now.
When we say the effectiveness of propagandizing from a German perspective of the minister of propaganda, if you try to extract what they do well and apply it today with technology, it's essentially you're answering a few questions. How do you sway the public masses with the widest reach? How do you do it quickly, like just very quickly? And how do you make it emotionally provocative as possible? And how do you continue to spin it constantly, repeat on repeat? Well, our devices do that, accomplishes all those things that nothing has ever accomplished. No newspaper, no TV programming has accomplished that mass spread of manipulation of the masses, of opinion to the emotional level. And this is just me, like, wild speculating for fun with the whole COVID-19 thing. Like, what if COVID-19 and the whole vaccine thing, like, this is just a wild random thing, but the vaccine or whatever, or the virus itself, whatever it may be that went into your body, it had something to do with rewiring your amygdala. And the amygdala is the part of your brain that modulates anger and modulates those excitable emotions. And it's as if this vaccine was able to rewire and tinker that in the population of the masses, that people are way more reactive and susceptible and just way more emotional or tribal or dogmatic about things or emotionally driven to things. Because after COVID-19, like I said, it's permeated every aspect of how we even think about each other, how we do community. It's permeated every aspect of how we just process knowledge. We don't even know how to process knowledge today. That's why I had our last spiel on the podcast is that it's an epistemological crisis. We don't know how to determine what good knowledge is and how to process it and exchange knowledge with others. So you add that all together, man, that's sort of the state of
That'd be crazy.
The amygdala that is hijacked right now. It really is like, and you would never notice it in plain day too. Like your everyday life, it doesn't like do anything enough to sort of make it readily apparent that something's different.
I think a symptom is early Alzheimer's. I'm forgetting shit all the time. Like, remember the names.
Forgetting things. Yeah.
I was telling something the other day. I was like, the other day I was thinking. I said, oh yeah, President Biden, and I started thinking in my head, like, what was his first name? I'm serious. I totally forgot Joe Biden. I just kept thinking President Biden. I couldn't remember Joe. Like, and I at that moment I actually got scared because I actually really questioned myself. How in the world do I not remember President Biden's first name? Like, something's not right with me. Like, it was like one of the very few times, like, I was really astonished by that. I panicked a bit because that is so obvious, you know? And it got to the point where I was like, I'm going to look it up on my phone. I was like, no, you are not. Like,
no, I need to figure this out.
No, like, you need to just let this shit go. And it wasn't until like 20 minutes later it hit me. And I was, oh,
John Biden. John Biden.
No, I was like way off. I was like, Philip?
Not even in the J's.
Yeah. It wasn't even in the J's. It was like, it was that bad. And it was like a complete brain fart for some reason that it now... Again, I'm very forgettable. I forget people's names all the time. I say a lot of words out of context in a lot of different ways. My brain works like that. I say people's names incorrectly. But Joe Biden, being president of the United States, Joe Biden.
And the name's not hard.
The name's not it's Joe. For me to forget that, that for me was like, it was a shocking moment for me.
It's those cocaine's a hell of a drug moments. You know, like, shit, what am I been doing, man? Am I like high on something? I can't remember basic things, but.
Maybe that's a symptom. I don't know, because it's never gotten that bad. That
So
right
it's
there
either
was
your
like,
amygdala with the emotional processing, or just the short-term memory or longer memory processing.
I don't know.
Something's off.
I think a lot of times when we go through this process of trying to figure out and learn and understand exactly like what's going on, yeah, a lot of the times, like we were talking, it's not really based on the idea of arguing over objective truths with people. It is going back to that psyop and the idea that, you know, like people aren't looking to be right, they want to be righteous. You know, like that's the whole argument. You want to circle the entire argument around being righteous. This is idea around, you know, like shaming the other, making them look bad, you know, not because it's the right thing to do, but it's the righteous thing. The whole, that's why there's so many of these elements of different movements, you know, and this tribalism and collectivism thoughts of greater group thinking of like, no, like dividing us into these little segments of our race, our gender, of our, you know, our sexual preferences and so forth there. And then you put the idea of that righteousness in that argument, you know, like if it was very objective and it was a reality of, you know, like black and white kind of issue, then no, there wouldn't be that argument. But right now there's such a focus on this entire idea of just that feeling of being righteous, you know, like that's going on in all the entire ecosystem of people arguing and bickering and fighting over every little thing. You could take almost every little thing or current event, an argument that's being debated every single day and every single week. And it's never about something like that can be objectively right or wrong or whatever it is. It is always this argument about this idea of who's more righteous, you know, like that doesn't make any sense at all.
Or the attempt is to win out your opponent, even though the winning conditions are what the hell are they, the winning conditions? But that's today's theater. That's why Piers Morgan's so exciting, right? Because that's the whole setup of the show is who can win out, who can beat each other. It goes back to the elements of, hey, the Aryan race, the Germans, we're superior in this regard. We're just superior. So we're going to one-up you. And then the ideology of communism and capitalism or social class and whatever, we're the superior ideology. We have to one-up them. One-ing up the Soviets was the moon landing, perhaps.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it. We're going to one-up you. What is one-upping each other? You know what that word is called? Trump. To trump someone.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy how the world works in such a way where right now Trump is trumping the other side.
Yeah.
And that's why it hurts so much to the other side that his name is Trump and he's trumped them. He's won the election. And that, you know, and I'm not saying that Trump did it out of his own. He just wanted to one up them or beat them.
Yeah.
I mean, part of that may be true. And part of it is he wants to fix the country. So both and, but I'm just saying that that's embedded into the sort of the evil soul of a lot of egotistically driven narcissists, and the whole power hungry is to, I have to one up people. I have to be cooler than that person. I have to be smarter than that person. I have to shame that person. And gives themselves value and stuff. And the best way to nullify that is you just don't care. Like, because there's no winning condition. If someone comes in and like shames everything I've just said or whatever, I'd be like, yeah, I'll try to actually learn from it if there's something. But ultimately, like, I see what you're doing here, man. There's so much of this rhetoric from certain sides of those media, those videos where it's just like, oh, it's hard to watch. I cringe, not because like, I'm not gonna let my amygdala get caught up in this right now, you know, like, and so that's sort of the story today of people trumping each other. And the irony is our president's Trump, and there's a whole, you know, you couldn't write this whole narrative. You couldn't write this story because the true history is just like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
You know, people are just trying to one up each other. But I don't know. Next time we'll look at sort of the next stage of the chilling October factor, which is like the chilling paranormal side. I wouldn't call it paranormal. Phenomena is really interesting.
Yeah.
The phenomena in life, like why is there sleep paralysis and the ghosts and why are there these crazy sensations that us as humans are able to have antennas to perceive, or are we just crazy and making up shit, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah.